Well, good morning and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com. Today we're going to talk about Reconciliation 2.0. Is this a must pass for the Republicans? And what Wall Street and the cost of living realities all say about it? Because you're going to hear more and more about it. It's funny, after all the ICE talk and all these things, this is still going on. Life is still going on. And Republicans on Capitol Hill are rolling out a sequel to last year's sweeping budget bill. You remember it? It was the one big beautiful bill, and this one's called Reconciliation 2.0. Isn't just another piece of legislation; it is a defining moment. Leaders pitching the bill argue that this is the final shot before the midterm elections to cement conservative economic priorities, lower costs, codify the Trump agenda, and tighten fiscal discipline across all federal programs. I think it's short of codifying all the Doge cuts, but let's cut through the Beltway buzzwords and ask some of the core questions, because this is important. First, is the policy direction economically defensible? We'll talk about that. How does Wall Street see this picture? And what does it mean in the real world where we live, where Americans feel cost pressures in housing, groceries, rent, every day? Well, here's what the data and the markets are telling us. Reconciliation 2.0, the GOP's push and political imperative. Officially, the GOP's framework, dubbed Making the American Dream Affordable Again, is being framed as a must-pass package aimed at cutting wasteful spending, hammering down bureaucratic inefficiencies, and opening the door to cheaper housing and healthcare, and codifying key Trump administrative priorities. The Republican Study Committee Chair, August Pfluger, and the House Budget Committee Chair, Jody Arrington, have led this charge, pitching the bill as a next generation budget reconciliation play that builds on the one big beautiful bill that we talked about from last year, but with a sharper focus on affordability. Okay. Now here's the deal. For the GOP, timing is everything. They have a political window, with Republicans holding a narrow trifecta in Washington this year, a historical trend showing that the president's party, Republican or Democrat, often loses ground in the midterms. This might be the only chance they get to legislate conservative economics without Democrat votes, because they don't need Democrat votes. They don't. Internal GOP dynamics are as follows, because there's always some crap going on there too, right? Conservatives in the House are pushing hard for action. Got to do something. So far, it's been lots of talk. I mean, we see stuff on TikTok and on X that, there are a lot of people out here just who want to see, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and all these people, frog marched into prison. First of all, let me help you. That none of that's going to happen. But we want to see action. We want to see something actually going on. So, warning that failing to seize the correct reconciliation tool will be political malpractice. But leadership on both chambers are cautious. They're afraid. They're scared because they're sissies and wimps, because that's what Republicans are. They're so afraid of losing that they lose. I often make it like this. You know what the defense prevents you from doing? Say it with me. Winning. Prevents you from defending. You pull so far back that you allow so much room for the offense to maneuver. Because sometimes you got to play hard, right? Sometimes you have to play to win. And leadership in both chambers, the Senate and the House, are cautious. That's a buzzword for scared. With the razor thin margins and ideological splits within the conference, which ought to tell them you got to do something. Even the squishy moderates have to understand something's got to happen. Things can't stay the same. And of course, this sounds like deja vu from the debates around the one big beautiful bill. Well, it's because it is. It's the same people. But this round, proponents say, is leaner, it's more targeted, and aimed at what voters actually care about: pocketbook issues. Yet, blunt political will doesn't automatically translate into economic good. Let's talk about what Wall Street is saying. Here's where we bring the markets into the conversation. Wall Street is essentially a giant scoreboard of confidence, whether investors think economic policy supports growth, inflation stability, and corporate earnings. So as of mid-January 2026, today is this, we're doing this, it's the 16th. Oh, goodness. It's already the 16th. Can you believe that? Major U.S. indices are posting gains. The S&P 500, the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ are all finished modestly higher, with the S&P 500 up year to date and indices nearing all-time highs. Strong earnings momentum is lifting sentiment. Reports indicate robust earnings from financial institutions like Morgan Stanley, driven in part by deal making and underwriting, suggesting corporate America still has wind in its sails. There are bullish analyst forecasts for 2026. Wall Street consensus expects strong earning growth, around 15 to 16% for the S&P 500. Wow. Usually justifies higher stock prices. Now, we have a side, and then you always have the flip side. Volatility remains real. On some days last week, bank stocks and major tech laggards dragged the broader indices into negative territory. NASDAQ pullbacks show tech is no longer a one-way rocket. Critics warn about overvaluation, especially in AI-driven sectors, suggesting parts of the market may already be priced for perfection. So what does that mean? Markets are saying economic backdrop is decent, but risks aren't priced out. And policy uncertainty, including whether Congress can pass a major reconciliation package, feeds into that risk premium. A big reconciliation bill could be interpreted a couple of ways. The first way, stimulus and growth story. If it lowers cost and increases efficiency, it could be a net positive for consumer spending and corporate profits. No, second way, deficit and regulatory risk. If it expands deficits or triggers market fears about fiscal discipline, markets could wobble. But right now, today, on Friday the 16th, markets seem to be leaning towards the first narrative. But Wall Street is notoriously fickle. A few negative headlines, and there you go. All right. I also wanted to talk about the cost of living index and American reality, because cost of living isn't an abstraction. Things cost what they cost. And normally, for most people, you start off the month with X number of dollars, right? X number of dollars. And then you've got to make X number of dollars cover rent, mortgage, car payment, car insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, medical bills, food, fuel, right? And what you hope is that when you have a place to stay and something to eat, that's basically what we're talking about. Having somewhere to eat, to sleep inside, having something to eat, right? And you hope that there is something from that box of money that you had left over to, I don't know, save, maybe invest. So that's the only way you get ahead, right? We all know that you don't get ahead by getting a better job. You get ahead by investing, saving and investing. That's how you get ahead. So we have to talk about the cost of living index. It matters because you've heard the political talking points about affordability. Well, let's talk about what people actually face out here, out here where we are. All right. Economists and statisticians use the cost of living index, COLI, COLI, to compare how expensive it is to live in different cities and measure the relative price levels of goods and services. Here are the real takeaway points here. Housing remains the biggest drag. In many places, housing costs dwarf the national averages. Places like Hawaii, of course, and New York regularly show cost of living index readings well above 140% of average. Regional disparities are stark. For an average professional managerial household in 2024, Manhattan could cost more than twice the national average on basic goods and services, while some Midwestern cities remain significantly cheaper. Costs can outpace wage growth, and they often do, right? That's why you're like, everything's, that's why you notice everything is so expensive because you haven't gotten a raise in a bit, and the raise you got, maybe it covered inflation, 2 years ago, or maybe it didn't. It probably didn't. So the cost of stuff outpace wage growth. A cost of living index reading doesn't directly measure inflation over time, but it reflects the price levels that consumers face. And for essentials like housing, transportation, food, these costs have been climbing faster than the average wages in a lot of metro areas. So if Reconciliation 2.0 is really about making life more affordable, it has to address real cornerstones of cost. And those are housing, healthcare, energy. And the markets care about that too. Consumer spending drives corporate profits. And consumer spending is only going to get more when people can afford more. So once you got your housing and your healthcare and your energy taken care of, maybe then you get some durable goods. Maybe then you replace that washer, or you replace that dryer, or that refrigerator, or that computer, or get a chandelier installed where your wife works in her office so she can have a better life. Yeah, I told you something, didn't I? Anyway, so well, here's where policy, markets, and real people all intersect. We talk about all these things as if they're abstract and they don't have anything to do with each other, but they do. Okay, now we've got the electoral calculus, Wall Street, cost of living reality. Let's connect all the dots, right? Inflation and interest rates. Praise the Lord that inflation has cooled from its 2022 peaks, a trend that's good, and it's good news for markets and consumers alike. Cooler inflation often leads to easier Federal Reserve policy, which boosts stocks and lowers borrowing costs for things like homes and businesses. Markets are already pricing in that rate cuts are coming. And that's partly why we're seeing gains in both stocks and more housing activity, even in the winter. So if Reconciliation 2.0 helps keep inflation tame by lowering certain federal costs, or at least doesn't add fuel to the inflationary fire, it will be viewed as favorable by investors and the real economy. Number two, taxes, incentives, and business sentiment. Okay, the original One Big Beautiful Bill had major tax provisions that shifted the fiscal landscape. Reconciliation 2.0 is aiming for more targeted relief and spending cuts. So, if policymakers actually manage to lower taxes on productive investment and cut red tape, especially in the energy and housing development sectors, that could help both jobs and corporate earnings. But let's be honest, tax policy is proportionally benefits upper brackets without stimulating broad growth. That doesn't help Main Street. Okay. And markets can smell that. History shows that tax cuts have to be paired with real demand to sustain long bull markets. Markets advanced sharply in 2024 thanks to strong earnings growth and optimism about AI, not just tax change. All right, three, we're going to talk about cost of living, paychecks, and political realities. Americans aren't cheering in the living room about Wall Street rally numbers. We're not. Whenever you hear this on the news, we're not like, oh, the Dow's up. Yay. Let's have a baby. It's not what's happening. Okay. People are feeling housing costs, especially if you're a renter. Grocery prices, especially if you're an eater. Healthcare premiums, especially if you're old and fat. I need to go to the doctor every month. So the cost of living index data tells us when costs consistently exceed wage growth, that's a political vulnerability. Because rightly or wrongly, people seek relief from their elected officials. Okay. That's why messaging around affordability is so central to Reconciliation 2.0. But the bill needs hard policies that tangibly lower prices, not just a bunch of feel good rhetoric. So far, the GOP outlines lean riffs. Now, we haven't seen the legislation specifics that would move the affordability needle for ordinary households. We've heard a lot of the talk about what it's supposed to, but we haven't seen any of the actual legislation that moves the needle. That's what we're going to have to see. All right. Because here's the reality check. Here's what's got to happen. Policy must target real costs, especially housing supply constraints and healthcare costs that eat into take-home pay. All this branding about affordability is worthless unless it lowers the actual bills that people pay. The markets will need clarity. Wall Street thrives on certainty. Okay. Half-baked reconciliation bill that sparks fear of deficits or policy flip-flops will spook investors. Excuse me. Colleges and healthcare can't be afterthoughts. If young families still can't afford childcare or student loan burdens, they won't feel the economic recovery in their wallets, no matter what the stock market does. We have to be looking at our bank account on week 3 and 4 of the month and go, huh, I have some money left over that I didn't have a year ago. It's really that simple. It's really, I wish I could get to all of the folks in Washington and in Tallahassee and other places around the country, because it's really that simple. If I'm looking at my bank account, my checking account at weeks 3 and 4 of the month, and I can compare that to the same time last year, and if I can go, I've got 16% more money on week 3 and week 4 than I did last year, and I haven't done anything different, then something has become more affordable. Then life has become more affordable. All right. Everything, and I mean everything, anymore, no matter what, has a Trump factor. So we're going to talk about the Trump factor and the midterm stakes right after this. Good morning. Thanks everybody for watching this far. Hope you watched to the end of the video. I'd like to offer this to you. I'd like to offer you a chance to help the morning report. And all you need to do is go to the website, fightbackmedia.com. Fightbackmedia.com. There are some small, very small donate buttons that if you'd like to donate a little extra cash, you could do that. If you'd like to buy some 7 weeks coffee, you can use the promo code FightbackMedia to help us out, because 2026 I think is going to be a great year, and it's going to be an expensive year for us, and we could use as much help as we possibly can. Again, we're going to get right back to the program. Thank you again. FightbackMedia.com. FightbackMedia.com. One political reality looms over everything. Republicans have a limited window this year. Again, history says that the president's party usually loses ground in the midterms, and especially in the House. As a matter of fact, history says not only does the president's party lose ground, they usually lose that. If they had the House, they usually lose it. That means that a certain balance or equilibrium is returned. The president's party runs the executive branch, and at least half of the legislative branch is owned by the president's opposition party. So you got to use it while you got it. This is why, some of us who are old enough can think back to 2010. This is why it was so important for President Obama to get the Affordable Care Act over the finish line in 2010, because they were going to lose the House, and they did. Thanks to the Tea Party movement, they lost the House. If they had not done something, it may not be law now, because it passed without one single Republican vote. They didn't need any. And right now in the House, the Republicans don't need if Mike Johnson can keep everybody together, the Republicans don't technically need any Democrat votes. So now you got to make hay while the sun shines. Got to strike while the iron's hot. Or any other of those phrases that means you got to do it now, right? So if the GOP fails to pass a reconciliation package that feels like a win economically and politically, they've got to. That might cost them seats. It could damage their brand heading into 2028 even. But passing something, just to say it's passed, won't move middle America either. It's got to work. It's got to work. And it's got to affect people in the way that I said. You have to be able to look at your bank account on weeks 3 and 4 of the month and go, I'll compare this to last year. Or you get your check and you're looking at it like, did I get a raise? Yes. That's what's got to happen. All right. So here's the deal. Reconciliation 2.0 is more than just a headline. It's a litmus test of whether the Republican Party can deliver policy that actually improves economic life. Not just sounds good in a press release. Markets are cautiously optimistic. Wall Street is up. Earnings are strong. And the risk appetite is intact. It's like, maybe we can take on a little risk here. But the rally isn't bulletproof. More importantly, investors pay attention to clarity. And everyday Americans, they feel pressured by the cost of living index. All these realities every time they buy groceries or rent an apartment or buy gasoline. So Reconciliation 2.0 has the potential to be a political and economic win. but only if it targets real costs, earns bipartisan buy-in where possible. You might be able to do that. You might not be able to do that because, and frankly, that can't be the whole thing. Sometimes you just might have to go it alone. And it delivers clear policy wins that resonate beyond K Street. Because this package ends up, if this package ends up just as another, it's beautiful because we said so exercise, markets might shrug, and the voters definitely will. My name is Willie Lawson, and welcome to the Morning Report. Hope you enjoyed this program. If you've enjoyed it, go ahead and click that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share, comment, all that stuff. And until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.